In this video, I'm going to share with you a little known real estate strategy that's silently been collectively making millions for those in our community and myself. Now, I'm not going to BS you. I am not the go-to expert for this strategy. And frankly, I learned how to do this from the School of Hard Knocks. I've had zero formal education on this ridiculously profitable real estate strategy. So today, I'm just going to share what I've repeatedly learned by banging my head against the desk. I just want to put that out as a disclosure. I am only sharing my experience. I'm also going to share a real deal example that we did in 2023. It was a 60-acre property we bought for $285,000, and we used this strategy to turn around and sell it for $542,000. Just so you know how profitable this strategy really is. Now, before we dive into the real deal case study, let's actually dive into the mechanics of how this strategy works. There's 7 key points we need to understand to make this work. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's zoom out and get the bird's eye view on how this actually works. Really, all we're looking to do here is buy things in a bundle and unbundle it. In fact, this is one of the oldest tricks in the world of business. I mean, if you think about it, every business is essentially either unbundling or bundling something. I mean, just think about how many different businesses have been unbundled from Craigslist alone. It's crazy. So anyways, we're looking to do the same thing here with land. We buy big tracts and we unbundle them into smaller tracts. That's it. And if that doesn't make sense, I'll give you another analogy. Imagine you go to Costco, you buy a big old water bottle, 60 water bottles, right? You buy it for 25 cents a water bottle. Then you go to a baseball game and you say, hey, I'm gonna sell these individually for $1 per water bottle. That's the same premise. You buy in bulk, the price per unit's always lower. You sell individually, the price per unit goes up. It's that simple. Now, in real estate, there's more that goes into the actual mechanics of how we get the approvals to do this, how we find the right property, the steps we go through. And we're gonna cover just that. So let's walk through the 5 main points. Number 1, we need to find a state with friendly exemptions. These are typically gonna be red states, Republican states, states that have really broad land use rules. In essence, states that give you more freedom with the real estate you own. Now, the typical exemptions we're looking for are usually gonna be related to the quantity of units that we create or the acreage of each unit we create. So I'll give you an example. Take Texas, for example. Very friendly land use laws compared to other states like California. They have an exemption in the state of Texas that says if I buy a property and I subdivide it and each subdivided lot is more than 10 acres, all you gotta do is get a survey. No platting. And essentially what we're looking to do with this strategy here is avoid platting. We want to keep it as simple as possible. Now you can do all the crazy platting, major subdivide stuff, but that's really a whole other video and really a whole other strategy. I am looking to find the juiciest piece of fruit that's the lowest hanging, and that's this. Now, a lot of states, again, are gonna either have a size minimum or they're gonna have a quantity maximum. For example, I'm doing a subdivide in North Carolina right now. In that specific county, I can only create 3 lots if I want to circumvent the platting process. So I'm buying a 31 acre and chopping it up into 3 10-acre lots. Now each lot has to be in excess of 10 acres. So they got both a size requirement and a lot count requirement. You actually have to go and Google for the state you're looking in and see what those requirements are. Now there's gonna be statewide rules and there's gonna be county rules as well. There are also gonna be added layers of complexity if you're within city limits. And that brings me to point number 2. We are really just looking to run this subdivide strategy with rural recreational land. We wanna find the big rural tract that's outside of city limits. These deals are gonna have less zoning requirements. The subdivide regulations are gonna be less confusing. You don't have to typically worry about utilities. And we can buy these lots in really, really big chunks. Kind of the general rule of thumb is the more cuts, the more profit. So I could go buy a 1 acre and do a lot split into 2.5 acre lots, and that'll create a little bit of value. But if I go buy a 100 acre and I chop it up into 10 acre lots, there's a lot more value that was created there. And it's a lot easier to find these subdivides where you can chop into a higher quantity of lots with bigger tracts. It's not to say you can't subdivide down a 1 acre into tiny little increments, but it's almost always gonna be harder. So we wanna look for that rural recreational land, 2 to 5 to 6 to 8 hours out of the major metro. And we're gonna talk about exactly how you can understand if the market you're working in actually makes sense for a subdivide beyond just the exemptions. All right, that brings us to number 3, and that is road frontage is everything. I'm speaking in broad generalizations here, but for pretty much every state in the US, it's gonna be substantially easier to subdivide if you've got more road frontage. In fact, a lot of states or a lot of counties are gonna have road frontage limits for each lot. So for example, they might say, hey, every lot has to be 10 acres and above, and every lot has to have at least 200 feet of road frontage. Those are hypothetical numbers, but you get the point. Now, sure, you can go cut in road to make improvements to the property, but again, that's really not the focus here. We are looking for the vanilla cookie cutter subdivide. We don't have to make any physical improvements to the land, no platting, just get a survey, record it, and be done. So typically we look for properties that have 2-sided road frontage or at least road frontage running along the longest edge of the property. Right away, if a property doesn't have that, I'm almost always going to disqualify it as a subdivided candidate, because that's one of the things that we focus on. We only want to do this value add strategy on 10 out of 10 parcels. So if it's an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, I would rather flip it and then wait for that home run opportunity. All right, number 4, that brings us to the next one, which is shape is paramount. The day and age of creating weird bowling alley shaped lots, or flagpole lots, as people like to call them, is just dead and gone. And again, that's why road frontage is so important. See, a lot of people used to subdivide these really ugly, weird shaped properties because they had very limited road frontage. For me, the road frontage is what tells me how many lots I can create. Now, I might have a 100-acre lot, but I might only turn it into 425 acres because the road frontage tells me that's the only way for me to keep an appropriate shape. Or that's just how the layout of the lot tells me how to cut it. So in some cases, I would rather have a smaller quantity of lots, but a better shape for those properties. And that really weighs into our selection criteria, the kinds of properties we want to subdivide. Really, our best subdivided candidate is usually a square or rectangular property with two-sided road frontage. It allows us to make multiple cuts to it, get the highest quantity while still preserving a correct shape. So if you're looking at a subdivided candidate and the exemptions are good, it's a strong market, it's rural, but it has 300 feet of road frontage for a 20-acre lot, probably not a really good subdivided candidate, especially if it's super long and narrow. I would just walk away. And that brings us to number 5. You want to keep it vanilla, just like me. What that means is we want to stay away from properties with crazy topography, crazy flood zones, crazy wetlands, terrible access, those kinds of deals. Flip them. Don't subdivide them. We really want to just pursue the 10 out of 10 opportunities. The properties that are very, very vanilla, have the right exemptions and have the right demand. Those are the ones we're going to move forward with the subdivide. And that's the beautiful thing about the land flipping business model is we can flip 9 out of 10 properties, and that 1 out of 10, that perfect deal, we can take it across the finish line and actually go and complete the value add strategy. That's why you've got to be careful just having this as the one tool in your tool belt, because all of a sudden, if you just have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. All right, number 6, you need to ensure that there is a market for the new inventory you're creating. In a really simple way, you're creating a product. So I'm taking 100 acres, I'm taking that and bringing 10 new products to market of 10-acre lots. So is there demand for that new inventory you're creating? I see so many people get this completely backwards. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go to any MLS platform. I like Redfin. We're going to go make sure that there's an arbitrage for the price per acre on the larger increment versus the smaller increment. So one of the truisms about land is the larger the size of the property, the lower the price per acre. The smaller the size of the property, the higher the price per acre. And that's why there's an arbitrage opportunity here. So I first want to go validate, what is that spread? For example, I might be able to buy 100 acres at $2,500 an acre. And I see that 10 acres are trading at $7,500 an acre, $10,000 an acre. That's a real arbitrage. Now, most markets are always going to have a delta between those two sizes. Some markets more so than others. And a lot of that's going to be driven by demand. Is there demand for that new inventory that you're creating? So if we go and look and we see, God, there's no demand for 10 acres here, but there's a lot of demand for 20 acres. Well, I'm also going to partially subdivide off of what there's demand for. Now, that's kind of a weird example. If there's demand for 20s, there's usually demand for 10s. More what it might look like is you're in a rural setting and there's no demand for 1 acres, but there is demand for 10, 20, 30, 40 acres. So in that case, I'm not going to go through the extra legwork to take it down to 1 acres if there's not a buyer on the other end. But 10 to 20 acres, or whatever that example is, they're so synonymous, they're so close in size, you're usually not going to see a big difference in demand. But just first validate, is there a market for what you're going to create? And how long will it take for that market to absorb the new inventory you're creating? So inside LEA, we talk about something called sell-through rates. What that is how much supply is there currently, and every 30 days, how much turns over. So I would go over to Redfin, I'd look at Liberty County, Texas as a hypothetical. And let's say I'm looking at the 10 to 20 acres. And I can see right now there's 20 properties listed available. And every month there's 10 properties that sell for the 10 to 20 acres. Well, that's a 50% sell-through rate. So we can see how much of that inventory is being absorbed every month. We call that a highly liquid market. You need liquidity for the strategy to make sense. Number 7, get a quote and a timeline from your surveyor before getting the deal under contract. It's unbelievable the variance in cost and timelines for surveyors to actually subdivide properties. I've had some surveyors tell us it would take 8 months to go and survey the property. In fact, we had a 20-acre subdivide deal we were doing in Idaho that took so long to get a surveyor out there, we decided just to flip it as is. It was going to be 6 months plus for them to even walk the property. Partially because it's a small town, partially because it was winter, partially there's just bad weather. And the same thing is true with pricing. I've seen survey quotes as low as $4,000 to $5,000 all the way up to $20,000, $25,000. And sometimes that can be for the same size property. Now, of course, survey costs are going to go up with a bigger property. In the example I'm going to give you guys here today, I'm also going to share exactly what we spent for the survey. I would say industry standard for something that's under 100 acres is probably going to be $7,500 to $10,000 for a survey. So I need to validate that beforehand because I don't want my deal sitting as a subdivide and I can't even get it subdivided because I'm waiting on a surveyor. And same thing, if I don't understand the cost, that might break my underwriting. But more times than not, it's actually the timeline that's a real deal killer. I don't want to close on a property, have it sitting waiting with no potential buyers because I'm waiting for a surveyor to get out there. All right, guys, that's the general nuts and bolts of this rural recreational subdivide strategy. Now I can already hear the internet trolls saying, XYZ Sumner, you're so wrong. And they're right. I deliberately kept this strategy uber simple. We are just looking for the path of least resistance to subdivide rural land. This doesn't even touch on major subdivisions, entitlements, rezonings. I mean, the list goes on for different ways to add value to land. And those are all viable strategies, but frankly, they're well beyond the scope of this video. And if you're a brand new land investor, my best piece of advice to you is find one strategy and glom onto it. Become an expert. And the same goes for the markets you're working in. Intimately understand one specific state. Get really good at understanding those subdivide regulations. Go all in before you add something else to your plate. What I've seen from coaching hundreds of land investors is you just need one viable strategy to land fat paydays. And like I said with the disclosure in the beginning of this video, I'm not the expert. This isn't even the strategy that we focus on inside of Leah. Our strategy inside of Leah is really based around doing mid-market flips, no value add, heavy on the marketing, heavy on the building of the team. And it's a great strategy to scale up to 50 to 100K a month. But once we have people that are getting to this point, they want to start figuring out, well, how can I make more for every deal I do? This is one of the easiest levers to pull on to do just that. All right, let's talk about my very first Subdivide deal. Now, my first Subdivide deal took place last year. I've done 3 of them as it stands now. And we've had a bunch that are at different stages in the pipeline. Some that are about to go under contract, some that are under contract. I would suspect this year we'll probably do half a dozen subdivides. And I'm really focusing on quality over quantity. So our first ever subdivide was a 60 acre out in Texas. And frankly, it wasn't the best market in Texas. I was just so eager to get this first deal done. I knew it wasn't the best market. I knew it'd take time to sell, but I wanted to rip that Band-Aid off. My view in real estate has always been that the first deal is not to make you rich. The first deal is to build momentum and to build a proof of concept. And I've taken that same concept to everything I've ever done in life. So this was no different. So bought the 60 acre for $285,000. This lead came from cold texting. We took the 60 acre down to 6 10 acre tracts. It had really nice 3-sided road frontage. So on almost every edge of the property, it was one big rectangle. Now the survey cost us right around $9,000 to get the surveyed. And it took about 3 weeks. Since listing this property, we've sold 4 out of the 6 lots. So we sold 40 acres so far. We sold the total of the 4 lots for $362,000. And we have the other 2 lots listed at $90,000 a piece. So in total, when the dust settles, this deal will bring in about $542,000 in total sales value. And we bought it for $285,000. And honestly, we bought this deal relatively close to market value. And this deal also had some hair on it. One of the previous owners had taken a bunch of dirt and moved it around, and it was kind of chaos. Had it not had the kind of weird dirt stuff going on, we probably could have sold it closer to $650,000. And this was our first deal. We've gotten substantially better since then. And that's the beautiful thing about this strategy. We don't need to be bottom bargain barrel shoppers. Before we wrap up, a quick note from our dear sponsor, the infamous Leah. If you want to learn how myself and hundreds of others are making 6 and even 7 figures a year in profit by flipping raw land, you need to head over to landinvestor.co/apply. I'll put the link down below for you guys. When you click on this link, you'll have the opportunity to schedule a free 6-figure land investing strategy call. And on this call, we'll share the ins and outs of our Leah playbook, how we flip land for $20, $30, $40, $50,000 profits per flip while still maintaining a 10x ROAS on our marketing spend. And that's the beautiful thing about our model. For every dollar we put in, we get $10 to $15 on the back end. And we don't do it by leveraging strategies like this. Frankly, it's more advanced than what we even teach. There's a time and a place for this, but in the beginning, the easiest way to go make your first 6 figures in the world of real estate is by flipping raw land with no improvements. Anyways, guys, if you were a good fit for each other on the call, we'll extend the olive branch and invite you to work in lockstep with us as we help build your land investing business. Or you can take what we give you, run with it, go do it on your own. But it's important that I mention we only allow 15 new members to join Leah every month, as we're super fixated, we're focused, we're maniacal about quality over quantity. Cheers, friends. Hope you like this video. Go buy some dirt, subscribe to this channel, love yourself, have a great life. Take care.